Pop culture 2020. Oh yeah, we got an election and we've got a lot of craziness. It's Friday, so you know what that means. We're going to be talking about fun stuff today. In the last few weeks, we've been talking about comic books. And unfortunately, after our last episode aired, we talked about comic books, we lost Black Panther star and screen legend. He's a legend, even though a lot of people still are trying to figure out who he was. The great Chadwick Boseman unfortunately left us after a 4-year battle with cancer. Just amazing that he was acting at the same time as going through that fight. So we're going to talk about Chadwick briefly, then we're going to jump into election 2020, and we're going to talk about how pop culture affects elections and decision making people make on around, not just here in America, but globally when it comes to pop icons. We're going to talk a little bit about 9/11 and remember that day as we go through our show today. And we're going to jump into other topics. We're going to have some fun. It's Friday, so stay tuned. We got a lot more coming at you, so you're not going to want to miss us. Stay tuned. And this is To The Point. Now, today is 9/11, and I'm sure like many of you, you remember exactly where you were at. I remember where I was at, so I'll tell my story. It was 5:48 a.m. I was driving down Interstate 80. I was in Sacramento, California. I was on my way to the Sacramento Sheriff's Academy. It was early. I was actually listening to the radio, actually a country music station for some reason. I actually loved their morning show. I'm a morning show guy. Grew up on Stern, so I love my morning show. For some reason, the dial had been on that. Probably one of my bumpkin friends had been in my car, and that's what we were listening to. So that's what I was listening to, with maybe a scoosh of a small hangover because we had watched the Monday Night Football game and studied throughout later in the evening. We had to practice different things. We're in the academy. It was a full-time academy, so we had to learn at the same time as eating and doing all this. So anyways, I remember where I was, and I remember hearing it and thinking, isn't that suspicious? A small plane flying into a building in New York City? That's kind of odd. By the time I arrived at the gate, I will never forget hearing that people were describing the fire, and it wasn't a small plane that had impacted, but a rather large plane had impacted. I remember going into the room. I was a squad leader at the time, as were most of the military men and women that were there. I remember sitting in the back of the class with my cup of coffee and donut. Don't make fun of me, yes. I was at a Sheriff's Academy eating a donut and having coffee. Shut up. It was good. Damn, it was a good donut. And back in the day when I can have a donut and not have the guilt of having a donut. But anyways, I remember that moment like many of you do when you saw that plane come flying out. I have goosebumps just saying this. When that plane came out of left field and hit that building, hit the tower. I remember the silent scream. The folks in the room, we had a full class. The instructors had come in and kind of let us watch that. We were all grown-ups. We were watching. I was like, oh, we're grown-ups watching TV. But I remember it to that day. My sister lived in New York at the time. It was a very panicked moment, also knowing being a Marine that could be called back, being a father of a young daughter who was just 3 years old at the time. Just simply, that day never leaves our memory. Just like my grandfather enlisting, I have his Bible. And in his Bible, the day that his mother gave it to my grandfather was December 8th, 1941, on Long Island, New York, where my grandfather enlisted in the United States Army. This is the world we live in, folks. And I wish that it could be something other than it is, but it's not. The world we live in is violent, and it's only been furthered by violence. But we should not stop and forget the memory of those we lost on 9/11.
Tell me where to stand.
So, as we go into 9/11, it's not going to be forgotten. It will be brought up, but we are going to be talking about pop culture, obviously, and we've lost a lot of great icons in 2020. So, let's bring our guest out, who is a New Yorker, so I'm sure she'll have something to say about 9/11. And let's get into pop culture with today's guest. She's returning. She's our pop culture expert for the To The Point team. So we love welcoming back our good friend of the show, the wonderful Cooper Lawrence. Welcome back to the show, Cooper. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's so great to be here, Eric. Thank you so much. I mean, how am I doing? It's 9/11, and after all these years, it's still, especially living in New York, it just doesn't get easier.
Yeah.
It's like the minute I wake up in the morning and remember it's 9/11, suddenly it's hard not to be back. I feel like a lot of us in New York City have a little bit of, I don't want to say PTSD because I know that's reserved for people that have served and people that have, real trauma, but maybe like a minor version of it. We wake up and have that like sick feeling in our stomach. So
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, 9/11 is one of those things that, so many of my family live in New York. My sister was in New York when 9/11 happened. Were you on the air when 9/11 happened?
I was about to go on the air and they called me. It was funny because so I was working at a station I was in New York City. I lived not too far from the towers, and I was about to leave and get on the train to go to the radio station. And they called to tell me not to come in. But obviously I looked out my window and I saw something was going on. And I remember in the background hearing somebody screaming and one of the girls I worked with watched the first plane go into the tower, and I heard her screaming in the background on the phone. And then I really knew, because in the moment, if you remember, especially those of us who are here in New York at the time, it was instant chaos. Nobody really understood what was going on. And we thought, plane accident, some sort of, we didn't know. When the first plane hit, there were no answers. And then by the time the second plane hit, it was pretty clear what was going on. Yeah. And it was like you automatically went into that shock mode where you just couldn't believe what you were seeing in front of you. And for me, out my window at the time, I just, I got in touch with my cousin who was in the towers at the time, and he got out okay and came to my apartment, walked there. But, like many of us, I mean, I lost several people that day. And, and still you wake up every single 9/11 and it's just we're always going to feel it.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, I was on the West Coast, so the feels was being, having my sister in New York, and of course immediately trying to call her, and the phone lines are jammed. Mom and dad are going through the same thing, and just thinking of all those people, because the military brain is going, oh my God. And it's it's about a year or two later where they released that footage from that French film crew that came out that actually saw the first plane impact, when they're just out there with the fire department, and you're just like, oh my God, that started everything. And you can just kind of see the chaos from the firefighters. And that's why when I go to New York, every time, we stay in Soho, and I always go for a walk, and I love going to those stations down there and thanking those guys. Those are the ones, the response time. Jon Stewart said when he testified in Congress just earlier in 2020, or the end of 2019, he said the response time on 9/11 was 5 seconds.
Wow.
5 seconds. And
that's amazing.
And it's kind of ironic we're talking about Jon Stewart. Obviously, you talk about a lot about pop culture, but I think Jon Stewart is one of the greatest voices when it comes to what happened on 9/11, and talking about it, and making sure the folks that were on the pile, those folks who came rushing in afterwards, and we've seen it, the great Steve Buscemi, who's now a huge movie star and celebrity, he donned a uniform and went there. You had Dennis Leary going there, and creating TV show after TV show that covers it and shows it. So you did bring up PTSD and talking of the day. We did have on our show a former Secret Service agent, Samantha Horowitz. She was actually in the elevator in the other tower, the North Tower, when she was late to work, and she went in that tower. She was in the tower where the plane hit. And she's told this story, mind you, and now I'm going to do it because it's 9/11. I figure it just fits. And Samantha has a book about it. And she's in the elevator. Mind you, she's on air with me telling me the story just a few months ago, and I'm like, oh, crap. And she's like, Eric, I was in the elevator, and it shut, and I was like, crap, I'm late for work, and the Secret Service is not one of those places where you they like you to be late for work, and you can blame
Sure.
traffic only so much in your beautiful city. You guys do have a lot of cars. Good
We do.
excuse. I mean, it's a solid excuse. I'll give it a solid.
We have subways that just sit there for a long time,
You're
and
just like, hey, I'm not
inexplicably,
going
you're like,
anywhere.
I'm still
But
sitting on this subway. It's not moving. Yeah.
so she tells this story where she gets in the elevator. All of a sudden, there's a boom, and the elevator shook.
Wow.
And then it started shooting up. All of a sudden, it started shooting up, and she said all of a sudden they were met by this blast of debris and extreme heat, the hottest that she's ever felt, and the elevator was bouncing up and down, and they finally were able to open the door, and she was able to be a Secret Service agent and take everybody out, but it caused her so much stress for being in that building. And, and it's the fact she's sitting here saying it, and she's saying it in May.
Right.
And just you kind of look at our country. I mean, but for me, 9/11 is something that's always on my brain. I mean, when I go to New
Right.
York, I stay at the same hotel, the Dominic, shout out when they open again. I can't wait to be back. But I always ask for my room to face the Freedom Tower because I that's my way of paying respects. I haven't been there. I went to 9/11 when they first opened the pools, the memorial there. I won't go into the memorial. I've heard from all of my friends it's way too gripping. 9/11's already a hard enough day to listen to the phone calls, and the media,
Right.
of course, wants to spin up that footage like we need to be reminded of the sucker punch we got. But
Right.
it's one of those days. So it's always, it's good that we start this episode out remembering all those folks who, just that day, it was a beautiful
Right.
morning.
And
too.
it touched not just every American. I mean, it touched everybody worldwide.
Yeah.
Somebody knew somebody who knew somebody, or they had some relative, or they had some connection to it some way. So, it reverberates all these years later for everybody. So, of course, we have to acknowledge it because more than just the fact that it was a historical moment for the country, it's one of the few that we all have personal experiences. I look back to, I have a lot of family that was in World War II. And I was not around then, obviously, so I don't have a personal experience. I just, have like great uncles or, grandparents or that kind of thing. So it's not really personal. 9/11 is still very, very personal. And I think that's why we have to acknowledge it every year because, we all have a personal experience, a story, what we were doing that day. It's something that still resonates and important to talk about.
Yeah. And would you say that you think now 9/11 was probably the last time our country was really united? I mean, I remember that day and the days that followed.
I'm so glad you asked that. Hang on, let me say something. So I was in grad school at the time. I was doing radio, but I was part-time. I was actually full-time. I was full-time radio and full-time getting my PhD. And we were working on a study about patriotism right before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And we were finding that, around the country, patriotism was, it was sort of like it looked like this, like a little bit of a wave. There were certain things that made people feel patriotic, but not really. And then, you can't predict this as a scientist. And then 9/11 happened, and suddenly patriotism went through the roof. It didn't matter where you lived or what your political leanings were or how old you were. Suddenly it was like patriotism. It was crazy. And then over the years since 9/11, it's gone back to that little wave where you see little moments of it, but it's back down here again. Yeah. So 9/11 was pivotal for Americans to feel American. And it's really dwindled over the years. So I think it's interesting you asked that question.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, because I struggle. I mean, I've always been a President Bush fan, and I thought he did a great, I mean, come on, that is not a job anybody wants to have to do. You're the leader of the free world,
right.
And you just got this dropped on your front door. I'm not a tinfoil hat wearing person. I do not believe my country attacked my own country and took all these. That just,
of course,
those people
not.
are idiots. They all have MAGA hats now, But you look at that and you kind of think and chuckle of you look at 2020 and you say, hey, I'll pick on him, Mayor Rudy. Rudy at the time was everybody's American hero, right? He was there. He kind of brought New York together, and you're like,
right.
Now you look at it. I mean, it's just ironic in the fact that 9/11 was the epitome, and now it's like the linchpin to every number we use. I just saw it the other day in a study, and I wanted your feedback as a New Yorker, as somebody who witnessed this day with your own two eyes. The way I handle like the Challenger. I remember as a child, I watched the Space Shuttle Challenger blow up, not on TV, but literally in the sky. I grew up in Florida, so it happened before me. So that was, I know, 7 people, 2,300. There's a big difference. But Anyways,
It's still trauma. It's
a
still
lot,
something
yeah.
very traumatic that you're watching and have a personal experience. But okay, what's your question?
So you look at it, and, I mean, why is it that we have become this anti-patriotic country? Like, patriotism is judged in a different way. On that way, we were all united, and it didn't. You were right. It didn't matter what political party you were. Actually, before we're going to go to a break first. I don't want to jump into this and have to cut you short because I'm looking at time and like, we're not going to get there. And it's a longer question. But when we come back from the break, we're going to finish talking about our tribute to 9/11 today. But as we go into this break, I want everybody to kind of take a minute and think about those first responders that Cooper and I talked about that went dashing in on those days to save those people, those phone calls. I have goosebumps just talking about this, but
Yeah.
just thinking of those folks on those days and remember those first responders and what they did that day, because I think that day for me solidified a lot of people joining the military. I do know we have what we call post 9/11 military folks. I was obviously long before them, but that day kind of solidified a lot of people's service. And it's those 334 first responders gave their life on that day. If you think about running into two gigantic burning buildings, and they saved lives. It sounds like they saved thousands of lives, because I don't remember the exact number that were in those two buildings. I guarantee you it was much less than the 2,300 or so that paid the ultimate sacrifice that day. So we'll have more about this when we come back from the break. Continue talking about 9/11 on 9/11 with a New Yorker who watched it happen and a scientist. So it's kind of like you're like the Robert De Niro besides the mean look, the ultimate New Yorker. I got to give it to De Niro.
Swiss Army knife.
He does. I love the way he talks about New Yorkers, and he's done it for the years. And he brings up how we remember how New York rebounded from 9/11. I've been in Tribeca at a couple of his restaurants where you see they were shut down, and it kind of gives you. Right. Having children, I can tell you this, Cooper, is amazing. Having a 13 and 16-year-old, when they go to these restaurants and they see this stuff, 9/11 to both of them, they weren't alive. So it's their Pearl Harbor. Like for most of us who grew up with our grandparents from the Greatest Generation, Pearl Harbor is what's in our brains as a bad day. Or I don't know why the Beirut bombing doesn't ever get some love. 286 Marines were killed that day. I mean, that should be a pretty big thing.
We should acknowledge it a lot more. You're right.
Should get some, we think of Oklahoma and that bombing that took place in 96. That's 100, almost 200 lost that day. But like the World Trade Center was that day. But now we see 9/11 as a measure in 2020. You always see it. Well, this many people died in the last 3 days to COVID. More than died on 9/11, or when we were getting to the higher numbers during the beginning of COVID was at least it's below the amount of people who died on 9/11. As a New Yorker and a scientist, why is this day, which is supposed to be a patriotic day and think of love of country and unity, this day of we're just like, hey, it's the number. That's the magic number 3,000, and it's okay if it's below that. We ramp everything to this death. Why is that?
Well, I don't think it's as glib as that. I think it's more like, we want to try to get people's attention on how important COVID is and how damaging it is and how many lives are being lost. And there's a lot of people out there that are in denial that COVID's even a thing. So the only way to bring it home for them is to make it personal and to bring it to something they can relate to. I don't know if people know about the Beirut bombing as well as they know about 9/11. Everyone knows facts about it. There's been dozens of books and movies, and there's so many little stories that have emerged over the past, decade or so. So I think it's the most relatable number. It's a way to talk to people. It's a way to say, listen, I know you're not really understanding what's going on with COVID. Let me put it in perspective for you. Remember 9/11? Remember how many people died there? Well, I don't think it's meant to be condescending or to put 9/11 in some light that it's just to serve us now. No, the opposite. It's saying this was so incredibly important. So I want you to pay attention. That's important, and I'm using that to relate to now. So now is equally as important to your health and your life.
Perfect.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot. I love that because I don't know how to look at it. Almost, I don't know if it's the military side of me that's like, seriously, why are you comparing such a morbid day that is a gut punch? I mean,
Let me give you a fun analogy,
give
okay?
me one. I love this.
Yeah, you have two kids. Do you remember when they were little? They used to put things in their mouth a lot.
Yes.
Okay, the reason why children put things in their mouth is they're trying to gauge the size of it. They want to see how big is this compared to me. So they'll go over and like mouth a table. Okay, obviously I can't put this whole table in my mouth. This is clearly bigger than me. A pencil. Oh, this is tiny. This is smaller than me. So it's a way that you can take something familiar around them and relate to them, so they can gauge the world. This is pretty much the same thing. Using the number for 9/11 is the same way that we're measuring the world for people that are not really getting it. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, and it kind of leads to my next question. Next kind of thought that pops in when I think of 9/11 and I compare it to 2020, which is probably not a good comparison to do, but there are people that are voting for this particular person who is bright orange. Looks like a Cheeto, and he's very weird. But a lot of people who now put patriotism, and it's just weird because you look at unity for America, and we talked about Jon Stewart before the break, and what he's done for the folks that have been on the pile, and I loved him going after McConnell, just calling him out. It was like, hell yeah, that dude doesn't know patriotism. If it jumped up and slapped him, he's the little freaking gopher boy for the president, and it was good to see Jon Stewart. So he's kind of that epitome of, he's a New Yorker, clearly, loves firefighters, but he comes across authentic. And I bring this up because I've read your book, and you look at celebrities and a lot of their causes are like crap. But Jon Stewart, unless you could say likewise, he seems like this is genuinely his mission. He is emotionally attached to it, just like Steve Buscemi and just like Dennis Leary, despite hating the New York Yankees. He still loves New York and firefighters. Those guys, when they talk about 9/11 and the folks on the pile, you see their rage. You see it in their eyes. Even in Colbert, when John went on his show, you felt that hatred in that, like, we're going to talk about this, and I know
No, it's more than that. I'm glad you brought up Jon Stewart, because he's one of the people that I talk about extensively in my book, because he's one of the few celebrities that actually used his platform for good and not evil, and nothing selfish. He's really, it's basically like him and Bob Barker, who did Spay and Neuter Your Pets. There's very few celebrities that choose a cause and it doesn't have to do with like a mea culpa or a tax write-off or something for their image. They just had a scandal. Jon Stewart stepping up for the 9/11 Commission and stepping up for all those firefighters that didn't get the money that they were owed had nothing to do with him being a celebrity, other than the fact that he used his celebrity to help them. It didn't help his image. He was no longer on television. It didn't matter. So it was one of the few moments that a celebrity really used the celebrity for good and not evil. And he's the example that I use all the time that other celebrities should be looking towards to do something for the world that's true. We gave you this platform. If you think about it, yeah, you're talented, but we gave you the platform by watching your show or buying your music or your book or whatever it is you want us to consume. So maybe give something back in a genuine way. And Jon Stewart is one of the few celebrities that actually has.
You're right, he has, and that's what I love about him. And of course, Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump and his, just amazing give back to veterans looking for nothing in return.
That's right. He's another great example. And, and he says no to nothing. I have a lot of friends who, like you, are in the military or work for different military organizations here at home. And when they call him, when they call Gary Sinise and say, can you do something before the sentence is over, when do you need me? What time? How much can I give? So he is also one of those celebrities that is just genuinely trying to help. And it has nothing to do with him. He's not promoting anything. So, there's hope for those celebrities.
There is. I mean, I think of him. I mean, the list is very small, but I mean, I even give Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg for what they've done when it comes to World War II, just bringing the attention to so many things. I mean,
exactly.
As we move on, we've talked about 9/11. We're going to kind of jump into some pop culture here before we head to the break. But thinking of these folks kind of transitioning to celebs that do good. I think that's important because we are going to, when we come back from the break, we are going to talk about a celeb who, in my eyes, now should be brought to the sentence. And it's not that he did it for, he actually did. He inspired more than just one group of people. Jon Stewart, we're talking about firefighters and what he's done for them, and the genuine tears that he gets in his eyes when he wears their jacket. I watched that moment. I have chills thinking of that moment where they presented that to him. And then you think of Tom Hanks and what he does with the Dole Foundation, with helping the caregivers at home for our military, and him and Spielberg, what he's done for the Jewish community with his movies, and for our World War II veterans. Because don't you find it a little weird? It took till 2004 for our World War II veterans to get a memorial. We built memorials for everyone else, but World War II, the greatest generation, our grandparents are part of it. Most of them served. I mean, even our grandparents, our grandmothers served. I mean, if you think about a very weird time in our country, these are folks that went through it. So it just is weird that it took till 2004. Now,
it's shocking. It's shocking. That's just it's red tape and political, but at least it got done. So.
I mean, it's good. It's a beautiful memorial. I was upset to see protesters decided to hit it when they were in D.C. I was like, really, guys? The World War II memorial did nothing to you. Please don't go do that. That's just
Yeah, there's a fringe. There's a fringe everywhere.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we're gonna go destroy this monument. I mean, I just think those are celebs that are doing good. And we come back. I want to talk about, as you know, about a week and a half ago, we lost an amazing actor, just truly talented. Wonderful Chadwick Boseman, who, of course, one of his many characters, but what really he's changed the world was his as Black Panther in the movie, named the same thing, the Black Panther. Just an amazing. Did you ever have a chance, before we go to the break? Did you ever have a chance to interview him? I know you.
I didn't. I'm sadly I didn't, and I'm sorry that I didn't, because there was a junket and we just didn't get there that day. And I thought, I'll catch him on the next movie or Black Panther 2. I mean, who could have? You could never have predicted that at 43 years old we would lose him to colon cancer. It just we couldn't have seen that coming.
A quiet battle at that. Like, he kept it to himself. I mean, after reading your book, I'm always out to like find something wrong with celebs now. It's like, what are you doing? I want to make sure, like, I walk around.
That's the point. No, that's the point of celebritocracy, to be more vigilant when a celebrity comes forward. And I think Chadwick Boseman is one of the few that, good luck trying to find something wrong with that guy. He was amazing. But I guess we're going to talk about him in a minute.
We are. So when we come back, folks, we're going to talk about Chadwick Boseman, and then we're going to jump into celebs in election 2020. How much they really are going to influence your vote in less than 90 days. When we left, we were talking about the great and the late Chadwick Boseman. Just amazing actor, not just Black Panther, played Jackie Robinson. Fabulous as James Brown. I learned more about James Brown than I ever really wanted to. But watched it because it was Chadwick. Became hooked on him in his movies that he's been in. I watched 21 Bridges, which of course was filmed in your beautiful city, which was actually pretty good. I mean, you kind of knew the plot, but you were like, dude, it's got Chadwick and the other dude who was also in Avengers with him, and the guy from Varsity Blues. You just wanted to watch the movie. You're like, this can't be bad. So the sad thing is, one of the sad things is, the movies that he would have made, where he would have gone was with his career. He was relatively young. I mean, 43, he was really on a roll. I mean, he was at a point in his career that many actors wish to be at, where everybody wants to. I'm sure there was scripts flying his way like crazy. So, I mean, it's not even just the loss of what he's done. It's also the loss of what he would have done and who he would have been to the world, not just to Hollywood, but to the world. Yeah. I mean, he was amazing to the African-American community, too. I mean, so many children have talked about Chadwick being their hero, that it gave them, just like Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman has been a role model for girls and women across the world, are like, yes, we have a kick-ass hero now that is.
No, it's a big deal. I mean, my best friend's son, I remember when Black Panther was first coming out, and she got him a Black Panther costume, and he wore it every single day. She got it for him for Halloween, and he was like, no, he wore it all the time, because he had never seen a superhero with the same color skin as him. there were characters, there were actors, there were people here and there, but for the main character, for the superhero, for the lead, for the person that was the strong one to kind of show the way, he had never seen that before, and there he was with the same color skin as him, and he just felt a kinship with him, and he had pictures on his wall and all over his phone and stuff like that, and just I remember him not wanting to take off his
So awesome.
Black Panther costume for like a week, and we just thought it was so adorable. But then we were like, we should watch it.
Yeah, I mean, it is awesome because so many people. I mean, I remember going into not knowing what to expect watching Black Panther, and as everyone knows on this show, I love talking about comic books. In fact, you are following up after 3 straight weeks of us talking about comic books and pop culture. We even talked about Buckaroo Banzai. Maybe you might be the first guest who's actually knows that movie besides me. Shocking. Do you know that movie, Buckaroo Banzai?
I've heard of it. Who was in that?
Jeff Goldblum, the wonderful.
Oh,
Jeff Goldblum.
okay. Then maybe I don't know it. I know I've heard of it.
He's a
but...
hipster cowboy. Come on, you have to. I mean, anything with Jeff Goldblum is automatically good.
Yeah, but, I'm also a girl, so
yes,
the cowboy thing. Yeah,
that's true. But you, sorry, I have to laugh at that one. But you look at Chadwick and the stories that have come out. Number one, a 4-year battle with stage 4 colon cancer. Was still filming movies, was still going for Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Right.
Living his life and not telling anybody. It's been amazing to hear the fallout from people. Like, why didn't he tell people? Like, how dare a celebrity? So who better to ask than you? When you think of, it's funny how people are mad that he didn't share his life with people. The fact that he has a wife was shocking to a lot of people. They didn't know that he had married his longtime girlfriend because he didn't, I guess, tweet about it.
Well, no, also, he married her right after he was diagnosed. I think he wanted to make sure that they were married, that was part of his legacy with her. So I think that said more, look, relationships are personal for a lot of celebrities. We don't always know everything about them. And I think one of the reasons why he didn't tell us, I mean, from my perspective as somebody who has been watching celebrities and working with celebrities for, decades at this point, over 20 years, I would say because once a celebrity comes out with a diagnosis, that's all they are. They're no longer an actor. They're no longer Black Panther. They're no longer whatever role they're playing. The fact that he kept working, he just wanted to be Chadwick Boseman, who happens to be a little skinnier, kind of inexplicably skinnier, but no reason to discuss it because first of all, it's none of our business, and second of all, then it paints him with that brush. Yep. And he wanted us to keep looking at him as the actor and the strong human being that he was, and now we're like, oh my God, you really are Black Panther. Like, what's more of a super? If you know people that died of colon cancer or breast cancer or lung cancer, the fact that you can work up until the very end is unheard of. That takes a level of strength and a level of commitment and to the world, to his fans, that goes beyond. That really is superhuman.
Yeah, and it's just tragic losing him. Just thinking here briefly while you were talking of that, we have his amazing, book of work, but what we could have had, and just the fact of how many people's. I mean, his speech to Denzel Washington was amazing. But I want to move on from Chadwick. Good old Wakanda forever.
Sure.
We will always be Black Panther. We've
Wakanda forever.
Yep. Wakanda forever. Always got to give Wakanda forever. Come on. I mean, the guy's just changed. But let's talk about election 2020 before you go. We're going to spend the rest of the show talking about this. So I got to start with this one, and I don't know if it rates celebrity because our president thinks he's a celebrity, and he was once on reality TV.
He is a celebrity. I'm sorry to tell you, he is a celebrity. He's more of a celebrity than a president.
That's true. And I was shocked watching the National Enquirer documentary on President Trump that he actually turned himself in and snitched on himself to the National Enquirer to tell about his own cheating scandals. I mean, that kind of sells me on this dude is special. But have you ever, and I just want somebody, and you're a scientist and pop culture goddess, I got to ask, have you ever heard a president get on front of our TVs and go, my ratings are up. Did you see how great my ratings are? And the NBA ratings are down. What is going on? Why? What do TV ratings and him being president or being elected have to do with anything?
He's a celebrity first.
Oh.
That's the reminder. He's a celebrity first. Because if you think about it, all the times that he was on, his own reality show, The Apprentice, and he had many versions of it, The Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice, and then every other show he did, the pageants, it's all about ratings. He measures how he's doing with the American people based on the numbers. So, as a president, we look at polling, and not that that's always so accurate, but ratings are accurate. Either a show does well and has viewers or it doesn't. You can't, it's not like a pollster, or it's not like, all these years that I've been doing what I do, I've never been polled. No one's ever asked me who I'm voting for. Whereas I get to vote for television shows by watching them. So I think it's one of the few ways that he feels that he accurately can predict what percentage of Americans are on his side.
He just always is giving ratings. I recently saw him judge the NBA about kneeling, which is
he's mad at them right now, so he's going to find the negative ratings there. Yeah,
he should be happy. Their protest during the RNC took viewers that, well, they clearly didn't show up. We saw his ratings for Wednesday and Thursday night at the RNC, and they were well below the DNC. So he should have been happy that I don't know. I don't think he would have been happy. He would have blamed them if the ratings numbers came in what they did. I just find it odd as a president who runs our country that the phrase ratings aren't talking about how to bring COVID down, talk about create more jobs, things that are.
But he's not a politician. He's a celebrity who always gauged his life based on ratings. That's what he knows. He always falls back to what's familiar to him, and that's what's familiar. It's weird to hear as a president, but if you put it in perspective and understand that he's a celebrity first, it makes perfect sense.
But I mean, then that leads me to a question, and we'll answer it now, and then we'll come back and wrap. But here it is. So why are so many people enamored by him? If he's not a politician, which is truly what our country needs, you need a leader. Being good on set. I mean, I love George Clooney when he was in ER. And I loved him in all the Oceans movies, but that doesn't mean I want him as my president. I think he has some common sense, but yeah, he's a good actor. I don't know if I want him there, running my country. Why are so many people enamored? Certain people, not everybody. Why are so many people enamored by this guy? Is just how loud and blatantly disrespectful he is? I mean, what gives?
Well, they're not enamored with him anymore. I mean, in 2016, they were because he's a celebrity. You got to think about it like this. When you look back at presidential candidates, we had to get to know them. With Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he ran, for example, in California, everyone knew who he was already. We had a beat on him, so it was easy to vote for him because we knew him, as opposed to, who's that other guy, some politician. So I think that that Donald Trump had that same advantage in 2016, that we already knew him, we knew who he was, we knew what we were getting, and I think a lot of people felt very disillusioned by politics. They felt like that's the swamp. This guy he has nothing to do with politics, and they liked that idea instead of realizing somebody who's not a politician may not know how to run, the country. But all this time later, I mean, every poll I look at, every friend of mine I have tons of friends who are Republicans that are like, I'm not voting for that guy. I voted initially because he was my party, he was my guy. I had hope. He made all these promises. He kept none of them. And I am not voting for him this time around. These are Republican friends of mine that they were swayed by the celebrity of him, and they saw what he did. They see where the country is now. COVID, they see unemployment. They don't feel hope for the future. And who's the guy who gave them that lack of hope? The guy that's been in the big white building for the past 4 years. Yeah, right. So I think he was a big celebrity in 2016. I think now he's a politician, and a lot of people don't like that.
I love it. So when we're back to close out the show, we're going to finish talking and dive into one topic that I love in your book covers. We're going to talk about how much do these celebrities, real celebrities that aren't running for office, how much do they really sway voters out there coming up in 2020 and in past elections? We'll be right back after the... before we went to the break, we were talking Donald Trump and ratings. But I want to talk about and wrap the show on this one, Cooper. And your book talks about it, but I really want to dive bomb in on this.
Wait, what's the name of my book? I didn't hear it.
Celebrocracy, and a whole long title afterwards that I can't remember.
Celebritocracy, that's right. Yes.
See, it's a hard title.
Sure.
I own the book, okay? Dang it.
I know you do. And you read it, and I appreciate that.
This is a rough crowd. I shared it on social, too. Come on now.
That's right. You did. You've been great.
I bought a couple copies. Every one of my children has it, and I have older children besides the 2 that live in my house. So
thank you.
We're good. We own every edition there is, and it's a physical book because you don't. If Audible takes up too much room on your phone, make sure you download and just buy a book. It's easier, right?
That's true. That's what I said on Twitter. But the Audible version is coming out in November. So
did you voice it?
I didn't, because I'm not a professional voice person. They made me audition for my own book. That was my favorite part. That I had to audition. And I didn't get the job reading my own book, even though I'm in radio. So
that's weird. Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, I talk on radio every day. What do you mean I don't have a voice for this? But they let Simon Sinek read his book because he's got one of those buttery voices that he could, whatever Simon Sinek. I mean, Simon Sinek can read directions to me, and I listen to him. So
right. There's people like that. Yeah, no, they hired a famous, well-known book reading lady who's terrific.
Awesome. Well, that's good. So we'll go to the question. So how much influence? So the Republicans have Ted Nugent. I mean, it sounds like a really bad state fair tour, but Ted Nugent,
Kid Rock.
Yeah, Kid Rock. There's a winner. Chachi, Scott Baio, Dean Cain. I mean, come on. This is like, if you want to talk about TV shows that got canceled, this is like the whole cancellation tour going on here. And then you have the Democrats. They've got Beyonce and Taylor Swift and...
The difference is millennials and Gen Z know who the celebrities are that are stumping for the Democrats.
I'm over here struggling.
You got to explain to the millennials. Okay, here's who Dean Cain was. Yeah. Here's who Scott Baio was. Here's who Ted Nugent. They don't know. They don't know.
So how much influence do these folks really? How much do celebrities influence my voting? I know I could care less, and I love Taylor. Right. I love T Swizzle, and I love Bay. I would never, you never speak out against Bay. That's just, you don't want those people coming after you. Those people are crazy. Her fans they're amazing.
Oh, the Bayhive, yeah.
The Beehive is just crazy. So how much influence does that have? I know over me it doesn't have much, but that's me. How much do you see as a scientist? Do you see Taylor Swift in saying, I'm going to vote for Biden? How much does that influence anybody to vote?
Yeah, there's a lot of research on this. There's a lot of data on this over the years, going back to Warren G. Harding, frankly.
Oh, wow.
And what they found is that celebrities only raise awareness, and they help raise money, which is helpful for a candidate, and they help raise awareness, which is great for a candidate. So all they do is they soften a candidate's image. But that's about it. They don't really influence your vote. They might influence people to vote, especially the younger people. Like Taylor Swift did get a lot of people to sign up to vote in Tennessee. Remember, she was going after, I forget who it was, like whoever the senator was that she didn't want to get into office. Yeah. So she got like 45,000 millennials and Gen Zers, or millennials, I guess, 18 plus, to register. So that's a big deal. But they don't really influence your vote. Your family and your friends have more of an influence on who you vote for. So the celebrities, like I said, all they do is they raise awareness and they soften an image, but they really, statistically, they do nothing to decide to help you decide who to vote for.
Sweet. Well, because that's always my concern is, I think that's great, raising money, and I think they do good to bring attention to certain things. But, right. Hillary Clinton in 2016 brought out the heavy guns, and LeBron James and Bey and Jay-Z and even Mr. Kanye West. Well, no, Kanye was always a Trumper, but everybody
he always
else
was. That's right.
Everybody else is over in this other corner, and it didn't make a lick of difference. Well, it depends. Right. By voting.
But also,
wise,
remember, like I said earlier, Trump
was
his own celebrity, so that was part of it too. It wasn't like Trump was an unknown person. If it was one of the other Republican candidates, then we'd be having a very different conversation. Trump was already a celebrity. So, but there is a certain percentage of people that celebrities raise awareness for the first time. If you don't know much about politics and the first time you hear about it is from Taylor Swift, then she has raised awareness for you. But that's a very small percentage of people that are engaged. So,
and we're going to wrap here, but when you come back, it's hard to believe we've had you on almost every month since we launched the show, and the next time you come on, we're going to be 1 month away.
I love that. October. I'm so excited.
I can't wait for this to be done and over with. Hopefully it's the way we all want it, but it's going to be crazy. I think these next 45 days are going to be absolutely bananas in our country. Actually, it's like 60 days or so. It's going to be bananas, and when you come back, it'll be interesting to see who else has come out and wants to support either side. So I want to thank you again for joining us. It's always great to have you on the show.
Thank
we
you.
learned so much. We got to talk. I thank you for joining us on 9/11 and opening up about the experience that you went through. It means a lot to our audience. I mean, a lot of us weren't in New York, so we didn't see it. So it's always good to kind of get perspective and think.
No, I appreciate being able to talk about it, because a lot of my New York friends here are like, I can't talk about it anymore. So I appreciate being able to talk about it with you and your audience. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So it'll be great. We can't wait to have you back on really soon. Cooper Lawrence, everybody, joining us to talk about pop culture and everything great. That was a show, amazing show at that. It's always great to see how a show turns out, talking about it on our 9/11, our first 9/11 episode here at To The Point. So I'll keep it brief. If you have any complaints, compliments, or want to be a guest on our show, feel free to email us at hello@tothepoint.com. Oh, hello@tothepointtv.com. We look forward to getting your email, and our team will back. Follow us on social, and we're going to end the show simply by thanking you and remembering those who gave their lives and lost their lives on 9/11, 2001. That's our show for today. As always, on behalf of the entire team at To The Point, we thank you. And as always, I'm Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
With Eric Mitchell. Let's get to the point. Sit and enjoy. This is Eric Mitchell. He the host of the show. Get to the point. He is the voice. We needed this, something more. This is a daily show that's known for politics and the sports. Ain't no limit to whoever you may see at this point. To celebrities, Eric he's beast in the joint. As a veteran, put him at ease, then anoint. Every conversation can never be disappointed. Whether tragic or it's happy, Eric will cover whatever's happening. Whether it be your gymnast, toe tapping, talking about nearly any athlete, not taking a back seat. You're never gonna get it past T. Everybody running from it, it's a stampede. But he's on it like this man who took that knee. Mr. Mitchell's way too crafty.